Okay, in this video I will talk about biological filtration and the proper and safe method of introducing fish into your tank. So let's take a look at Chapter 9, Your First Fish. Biofiltration is the most important filtration form. In Chapter 4 I discuss mechanical and chemical filtration, and these two filtration forms are fairly simple to understand, so you can go ahead and read about those. Biofiltration, again, is more important, and it's actually a little more complicated. Now, biofiltration relies on the work done by two groups of bacteria. The first group is the Nitrosomonas bacteria, and the second group is the Nitrospira bacteria. Now, these bacteria exist naturally in almost all bodies of water. Basically, where there are fish, there are these two bacteria. And the reason for this is because these two bacteria eat fish waste. Now, the fundamental building block of fish waste is ammonia, or NH3. The N just means ammonia is made up of one nitrogen atom, and the H3 means it's made up of three hydrogen atoms. So, ammonia consists of one nitrogen and three hydrogen atoms. This isn't all that important to know, just keep in mind that ammonia is very, very toxic to fish. And again, all fish waste will release ammonia. Ammonia is what makes fish waste toxic. And biological filtration is a very, very efficient way of removing ammonia from the water. So the process begins when the first group of bacteria, the Nitrosomonas, take the ammonia, which is very toxic, and convert it into nitrite, or NO2. This just means nitrite is made up of one nitrogen and two oxygen atoms. Now, nitrite is also toxic, but fortunately the process does not end here. The next group of bacteria, the Nitrospira, are going to go ahead and take the nitrite and convert it into relatively harmless nitrate, or NO3, one nitrogen and three oxygen atoms. Now, nitrate in very high levels can cause stress in fish. For the most part, it's relatively harmless, especially when compared to the toxicity of nitrite and ammonia. Again, ammonia is very toxic, nitrite is toxic, nitrate, harmless. So that's biological filtration. It consists of this two-step process. Nitrosomonas take ammonia, convert it into nitrite. Nitrospira then take the nitrite and convert it into nitrate. Now, keep in mind that before you add any fish to your tank, this whole process here, this biological filtration, is virtually non-existent. And that's because before you add your first fish, there's no waste being produced. There's no ammonia being produced, and hence these two bacteria have nothing to eat, and so their population is very close to zero. When you do add your first fish, you're essentially jump-starting this biofiltration process. And this is actually called cycling the aquarium. There's a diagram here that explains how this works. Now, the term cycling the aquarium is basically jargon for encouraging the growth of the beneficial bacteria. Cycling the tank relies on introducing your fish in batches versus introducing all of them in at once. So let's say you had a 40-gallon aquarium and you're using the 1 inch of fish per gallon rule. You definitely wouldn't want to introduce all 40 inches of fish in at once. If you did, what would happen is you'd be causing a sudden and large influx of ammonia, and since there's no bacteria in your tank when a tank is new, the bacteria population would not be able to multiply fast enough to handle the amount of waste being produced. So again, this is the reason why you want to introduce your fish in batches. The first batch of fish should probably consist of about 20% of the tank's total capacity. So if we go back to that 40-gallon example, that would be about 8 inches worth of fish. Again, 8 is 20% of 40. So when you introduce that first batch, the ammonia level is going to go ahead and actually rise. And again, this is because there's no bacteria to consume it. Nevertheless, once the ammonia becomes available, the first group of bacteria, the Nitrosomonas, is going to go ahead and start taking the ammonia and converting it to nitrite. So what's going to happen is the ammonia level will go ahead and decrease, just as the nitrite level is going to gradually increase. When nitrite becomes available, the second group of bacteria, the Nitrospira, will go ahead and take the nitrite and convert it into nitrate. So the nitrite level will decrease, just as the nitrate level gradually increases. When both the ammonia and nitrite levels are at 0, as indicated here, it's safe to add more fish. At this point, you have successfully cycled the aquarium. This whole process takes usually between 4 and 6 weeks. Now, you should keep in mind that although the ammonia and nitrite levels are at 0 here and here, that does not mean that these two substances are not being produced. In fact, they are being produced. It's just that they're being consumed just as fast as they're being produced. And again, that's because you have allowed the bacteria population to multiply. So there's so many bacteria in the tank that they're eating the ammonia and nitrite just as fast as it's being produced. And this is why it appears that the ammonia and nitrite levels are at 0. Also notice that the ammonia level initially increases only slightly. And again, that's because you introduced only a small batch of fish. If you introduced many fish at once, the result would be very different. What would happen is if you introduced a lot of fish, the ammonia level would actually skyrocket, kind of like that. And again, that's because there's no bacteria in the tank, in a brand new tank. And so if you introduce a lot of fish in at once, you're introducing a lot of waste-producing organisms, and hence the ammonia level is going to increase rapidly and to a very high level. And levels of ammonia that are this high cause fatal stress in fish. Levels this high will most likely kill all your fish. So you definitely want to avoid putting in a lot of fish in at once. Instead, you want to introduce them in batches. Okay, just to recap, when you introduce that first batch of fish, the ammonia level will initially increase, but once it becomes available, the first group of bacteria is going to go ahead and take it and convert it into nitrite. So the ammonia level will decrease, just as the nitrite level is going to go ahead and increase. And once nitrite becomes available, the second group of bacteria is going to eat the nitrite and convert it into nitrate. So the nitrite level will go ahead and decrease, just as the nitrate is going to go ahead and gradually increase. Now, nitrate you can remove only by way of partial water changes, as indicated here. Eventually, it will keep on increasing, but it's not a big deal. Nitrate is relatively harmless, and as long as you keep a tab on its levels by doing those partial water changes, you should be fine. Okay, so those are the basics of biofiltration and cycling the aquarium.